Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Carmen. If you're new here, this is going to be my everything that I read so far this year up to September, because I was not booktubing over the summer, or really mostly over the summer, so I wasn't doing any reading wrap-ups. There have been no updates whatsoever on what I've been reading this year, and I figured it's getting a little warm. I don't want the blanket. Yeah. I lost my train of thought. Yes, I haven't been giving any updates on what I've been reading this year, and two people said they did want to see this video. So I'm gonna do it, but we're gonna have to do it very quickly because it was a lot of books. I think it was like 39, maybe 40 books that I read from January to August. I won't spend a lot of time talking about them, or try not to. We all know I love to ramble, but I think I'm gonna try to just go through them and give my star ratings and if I would recommend them or not. But yes, I did try filming this video already. I tried to film it last week, but I was so tired, my brain just was not working. So I feel a little more rested up today. I've got my coffee in a very big mug that I love very much. So I think we should be able to do it. So we're just going to dive right in and get started. The first one that I read was Life from Scratch, which is a memoir of food, family, and forgiveness, and I rated it 4 stars. If you love cooking, if you love food, you should read this one, because yeah, she talks about her journey of cooking a dish from every country around the world, and kind of gives her little backstory, life story as well. I loved it. It was fantastic. It was a lot of fun, and it made me hungry, but I don't think I will be cooking all of that food. It seems like a lot to take on. But and then the next one that I read was Pax, A Journey Home, which is number 2 in this series, and I think it's just these two. But 5 stars. I loved this one so much. I cried at the end. It's a sweet ending, but it was also a little sad. I love it. I love foxes. I love this story. Both of these together. Aren't they beautiful too? My goodness. It's just a beautiful story. It is junior, so I will say that. I don't know if, maybe not everyone is interested in reading junior books, but that story is just beautiful. I loved it. 5 stars. 10 out of 10, recommend. And then the next one was The Autobiography of Hudson Taylor. 5 stars. I love reading stories about missionaries and just learning from their lives and being inspired by their willingness to sacrifice everything to take the gospel to unreached peoples around the world. Then the next one was Heidi, my first classic of the year. 5 stars. I loved this story. I loved following Heidi and her journey of moving to live with her grandfather in the Alps and all of the village people, the friends that she made. I think it's a fantastic story. It was the first time I read this classic, and I think anyone would love this one. It's such a sweet story. It's fantastic. And then next I read It's Not Supposed to Be This Way by Lysa TerKeurst. I read this in February, soon after my miscarriage. It was an appropriate time to read it. What did I rate it? I rated it 4 stars. But I do remember kind of feeling like some of it was good. I remember wanting to remember some of the things that she wrote down. It was really good, and I usually love Lysa TerKeurst's writing, but I don't know, there was something about this one that I didn't just totally love. Maybe it just wasn't quite deep enough, or it felt a little cliche or something. I don't really remember what it was. Like I said, it was good. I rated it 4 stars, but I do remember kind of walking away from it like, I I probably won't read this again, and that's why I don't have the physical copy anymore. But yes, there's that. And then the next one I read was, this is where we got into mood reading. I started mood reading 100% this year and just started picking up whatever I felt like reading. And I felt like reading Lori Wick's Every Storm. 5 stars. I love Lori Wick's writing. I know some people find her writing very cliche and boring even, and just, you know, typical Christian romance fiction. But I loved this one. Like I said, I love Lori Wick's writings. She's the first Christian fiction romance author I was introduced to when I was younger, and I love her books. And they're always clean. They might be a little cheesy and a little sappy, but they're clean, and I love the faith content in these books. And this one follows, what is her name? Lorraine and Josie. Yeah, they call her Lori. I was right. I was like getting confused with the author's name. They follow Lori. She and her sister were teaching in Australia, and during World War II, or right around the time that World War II began, and they had to go back home to the States, in California I believe it was, and there was a plane crash, and Lori was stranded on the island for a couple days and then was rescued by a lieutenant in the US Army. And a romance ensues, and it's their story of everything that, yeah, came to be, and Lori processing grief because her sister did die in that plane crash. So it was a lovely story. I loved it. It was great. And then the next one that I read was At the Edge of Summer. This one is set in World War I. I haven't read very many books set in World War I. It's always a tongue twister for me. But I wanted to pick this one up because it sounded very fascinating. I think I rated it 4 stars, yes. I rated it 4 stars, and we follow Claire. She is an artist, and she becomes friends with a young boy in France when she goes to live with that family, and then they get separated by time, and she has to leave with her grandfather and travel the world. And so they're writing letters in that time, but then when the war started they lost touch, and she couldn't find him because he had joined the army, and she then eventually goes to work at a shop where they are making facial prostheses for men who were injured in the war, you know, by casting and molding what their face originally would have looked like to make a mask so that they can go out and live a somewhat of a normal life again. And that's how she finds Luke again, because as she's working on his face, she then begins to recognize him and who he was, and they are reunited. And I found that aspect of the story, like the whole face, the prostheses making, I just found all of that fascinating because it is based off of a real lady. I don't remember her name. I should look that up and put it on the screen. But it's a fascinating story. I really enjoyed it, and from what I remember, it is clean. There's nothing. It is. It's not Christian fiction, but if I remember correctly, it is clean, and I loved the story. It was fantastic. And then the next one that I read was the novel for the first season. I really enjoyed it. It was fun to read it with the voices of the characters on the show playing in my head, and it follows the show word for word pretty much. So it was just a fun, quick little read. And then the next one that I read was Private Justice. My friend borrowed it, so I don't have it, but this is the first one in I think it's 5 books in the series of New Point 911 by Terri Blackstock. And this is the first series that I read by Terri Blackstock, and so this was a reread for me, Private Justice, but I loved it. It's, again, 5 stars, and I love Terri Blackstock's thriller mysteries, and this one was fantastic. And it's, the first book, The Private Justice, is about a serial killer targeting firefighters' wives. So, I loved it. It's a great story. Then the next one that I read was Hope's Mountain. This is the first in a trilogy. These I just found at the thrift store, and I have never read Misty M. Byler before, but I did rate it 5 stars. And we follow Ingrid and her father. They are going to the Montana Territory to deliver smallpox vaccines to the people there that are pretty much isolated right now, and there's an accident and her father passes away in this accident, but Ingrid is very determined to still get the smallpox vaccine to the people. And there's a man, Micah Bradley, who comes upon the accident and rescues her, helps save her, and it turns out he used to be a doctor. And so they work together to take the smallpox vaccines to the people, and obviously they fall in love, you know. And then the second one in that series I picked up was Love's Mountain Quest, and these are all connected, so characters you meet in the first book will be in this book, and then it dives deeper into their story. But Johanna Watson, she lost her husband. So she's a widow, and she has a little boy, 5-year-old boy, I believe that's his age. But he gets kidnapped along with the girl that was taking care of him for the day. And Johanna and a friend of hers, Isaac, go... So this whole book is pretty much about them going through the mountains and trying to find this gang of men who kidnapped the girl and... her son. He kind of knows where to go to look for them and find them, because of his past, he's somewhat connected to that gang of outlaws. And the third one in the series is Faith's Mountain Home, and this one follows the girl in the previous book who was kidnapped. Laura is her name, and then Nate Long and his brother, who are part of the gang that kidnapped her. In their journey of Nate. Aaron gets injured, the twin brother. He gets injured in the fight when they're rescuing the little boy and the girl that was kidnapped. And so they come back, and Ingrid from the first one and Micah take care of them and are their doctors, and just Nate and Laura's friendship growing, and Nate becoming a Christian and all of that. And then discovering a cave in the mountain that seems to be inhabited, but there might be something interesting going on in that cave, and they go to investigate and figure out what's going on there. All in all, I love the trilogy. It was very good, it was very clean, and I loved the faith content. So I was a fan. I enjoyed him. And then the next one that I picked up was Kristin Hannah's The Nightingale. It's such a lovely book. It's so pretty. I rated it. I did not rate it. Yes, I didn't rate it because I wasn't sure what to rate it. I loved the story, but there is some content in here that made me a little uncomfortable, and something that I know that most people who follow me, I don't know that I would recommend it to them to read. There's just a lot, because with the Nazis coming into France and occupying, and the Nazi officers were awful men who forced the women to do things that they didn't want to do. So it was a lot. So there's a lot of dark, heavy things in this book related to that. But the story follows two sisters, and the one is a wife and a mom who stays at home, and then their house becomes occupied. Like, the German officers come in and take over the house and take it to live in while they're there, and then the sister, why can't I remember her name? I think it's Vianne, yes. And Juliet. It's a bit of a dual timeline almost of just the one sister recounting the story, and yes, and the other sister gets involved with the French resistance, and yeah. I will just say, I loved the story, and I love Kristin Hannah's writing, but there is some content considerations, if people want to be aware of that, of, yes, rape and anything else that goes with fighting in a war and living in occupied territories. all of that. I'm just going to put that out there. The next one I read was another Christian nonfiction book, Grieving with Hope by, let me pull it up here, Samuel J. Hodges. This book was given to us by a grief share group that we attended for a couple weeks after our miscarriage, and I loved this book. I think it was the best one I read on grief so far, or one of the best, and just puts a lot of it into a good perspective and shows how everyone's grief journey is very different. I don't know. I really enjoyed the book, and it meant a lot to me when I was reading it, at the time that I was reading it. So yeah, if you're going through a hard time, if you're processing grief currently or have lost someone in the past, then I would recommend this book. It's very, very good and comforting. The next one that I read was The Lady's Mind by Francine Rivers. I don't love Francine Rivers' books, not all of them. My favorite books of hers would be the Mark of the Lion series, but I just don't really love any of her other books. Yeah, there's a whole, spiel about that I'm sure most of you are aware of, that there are very strongly mixed opinions on her books. But yes, this one I was really disappointed in this one, because I loved the Mark of the Lion series so much, and some of the others that I read, I expected a little more faith content for the characters. But this is a rewrite of one of her books that she published before she was a Christian author. And yeah, I rated it 2 stars. I didn't love it. There was no faith content. It just felt there. Okay, I can't say there was none. There was a little bit, but not much. And I didn't enjoy it. We're just gonna leave it at that. I did not enjoy this one. Okay, then the next one that I read, another Christian nonfiction, was Until Unity by Francis Chan. I rated this one. I didn't rate it. It's another one of those that I wasn't sure what to rate it because I still wanted to process what I read. And it is talking about unity within the church and within Christians and believers, in spite of all of our differences of convictions and opinions and interpretations, things like that. It was really good. I enjoyed it. I just wasn't sure what to rate it because, like I said, I was still trying to process some things. But I do love Francis Chan's writing, but this was the first one that I was like, I want to process this one a little bit more before I give it a rating and if I would recommend it. The next one was another Christian fiction book, The Road Home by Tommy Tenney. This is a modern retelling of the story of Naomi and Ruth and Boaz. It was boring. I only rated it 3 stars. And it's following Naomi, who used to be Amish, and she and her family moved out west to Utah and Las Vegas and places like that, and then her journey home back to the Amish in Pennsylvania. So yeah, 3 stars, a little boring. The next one was You're Not Enough and That's Okay by Allie Beth Stuckey. I rated this one 4 stars. The subtitle of this book is Escaping the Toxic Culture of Self-Love, and I found it was really good because I definitely have seen a rising trend of a very toxic self-love culture within our secular culture and within the Christian church. And it's becoming a bit of a problem. Paul warns Timothy that in the last days people will be lovers of self, and you see that very prevalent within the church, and especially in the secular culture of the world today. And this is just this book is just a pushback on that, of why we aren't enough as humans, and why that's okay because Jesus is enough, and just some of the other lies that we tend to believe. Yeah, 4 stars. I recommend it. The next one then was a recommendation by a friend of mine, Shadowlands by Kate Bryan. This is a YA. I rated it 2 stars, and I almost want to drop it down to 1 star because I do not recommend it. It was very strange. It's a thriller. The girl, Rory is her name, she escapes a serial killer, and she and her family moved to a new town, to a new island, to just kind of try to start life over again. And then some strange things start happening on the island, and there is a major plot twist in the story that I did not see coming, and usually I love books with plot twists like that I just had no clue I did not see it coming from any direction that this is what's happening. But I will say that I kind of had a little bit of feeling that something weird was happening on this island, this place that they moved to. And I was right. This is a spoiler, so if you have been interested in this book and have heard other people talking about it, skip ahead. But basically, she was actually killed, and this island that her family moved to is kind of like an in-between world between present day and the afterlife. That's just weird. I don't enjoy books like that with that whole concept of dealing with middle world and the afterlife, because it's not how it is, and just messing with that kind of stuff is just not, it's not my thing. So I do not recommend. Okay, so the next one that I picked up was the Wingfeather Tales by Andrew Peterson, and this book just goes along with the Wingfeather Saga series, and it's just a collection of seven stories from that world, and I loved it. It was great. It was just a great little addition to the series, of diving deeper into some of the characters and just their stories. I enjoyed it. It was fascinating, and if you loved the Wingfeather Saga series, then I believe you would really enjoy the Wingfeather Tales, the extra stories from that, because Andrew Peterson is not going to continue that series, and it left off with a little bit of a what happened, like what is the ending of the story, and that was the point. But I was happy to get a few extra stories within that world to read. I enjoyed it very much. The next one that I read was A Grand Illusion by David Young, How Progressive Christianity Undermines Biblical Faith. I picked this one up because it was a big recommendation by Alisa Childers. I follow her podcast. She's also on YouTube as well. But along with the toxic self-love culture, I see progressive Christianity subtly making its way into historic Christianity, biblical Christianity. And these books just brought a lot, this book just brought a lot to light in knowing the differences and knowing how to combat some of those teachings that aren't biblical, and to just, yeah, be aware of some of the teachings that are very popular on social media, especially just these little sayings and quotes and memes that get shared, that have a deeper meaning underneath them and can lead people away from progressive Christianity. Can lead people away from biblical Christianity, and it's a lot deeper than that as well, because there is a growing community within the Christian churches of people leaving historic Christianity and either eventually becoming an atheist or a progressive Christian. So 5 stars. Highly recommend if you're interested in things like that, of just being aware of some of those false teachings that are entering into our churches. And then the next one I picked up, Alisa Childers' books, Another Gospel, and this is her personal journey of going to a church who started and then started attending a class that the pastor was putting on, teaching about progressive Christianity, and just her faith journey, going through that and questioning everything she knew about the Christian faith, and then coming back to biblical Christianity through all of that. And I loved her story, and I love her fight for truth and of sticking to biblical historic Christianity. And then the next one I picked up was Ben-Hur, A Tale of Christ, A Tale of the Christ by Carol Wallace. So this one is written by Lou Wallace's great-great-granddaughter. So this is not the original Ben-Hur book. I was a little skeptical going into this book because the new movie that came out of the Ben-Hur changed the story so drastically that I was very upset because they took out some key points of the story. I'm gonna rant about this. I was very upset with the movie. The cinematography and everything was phenomenal. The acting was phenomenal, and obviously a lot better quality than the original Ben-Hur movie. but I hated that they changed some things in the story. It upset me so badly. I was just highly annoyed. So I was a little skeptical about this book because I'm like, did she change the story too? But no, she didn't. She just rewrote it, and it's a bit more of an easy read because it's an updated English language, and she cut out a lot of the many chapters full of descriptions of the Middle East, which Lew Wallace would have put in because back then people didn't have the internet and they didn't travel over to the Middle East. They didn't know what it looked like, and so he wrote these long descriptions, which are very beautiful, so that people would understand what the land looked like and the setting of the story and everything. But all of that was left out in this book, so this was a bit more of a quick read and easier to read, but I still say read Lew Wallace's Ben-Hur first, and then if you just want a quick reread, then you can pick up this one by Carol Wallace. So then the next one that I picked up was this little tiny booklet of How the Bible Came to Be by Phylicia Masonheimer. I follow her on Instagram. She's with Every Woman a Theologian. And I love most everything that she shares, and this book was very handy. It's a tiny, concise history of how the Bible came to be, how the books of the Bible were chosen, and why others were left out because of containing heresies and things like that. That the early church was like, no, that's not that's not right. But yes, if you're interested in how the Bible came to be, I would say this one is a very good, concise little history of how it all came to be. The next classic that I picked up was The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. The first classic that I did not enjoy. I literally only 1 star. And I believe that most people, this is a book that most people either love it or hate it, and I'm definitely on the side of hated, maybe more just didn't enjoy it. Lots of mixed opinions on this book, for sure. I understand why it's a classic. The writing was, I enjoyed the writing style of Fitzgerald, but yes, it's set in America in the roaring 20s with all the glitz and glamour, but to me it just really portrayed the moral depravity of America at that time, and yeah, I didn't enjoy it, and I don't know that I would recommend it. This was one classic I did not enjoy and did not keep and will not be reading again. Okay, so then the next series that I picked up was the Gresham Chronicles by Lawana Blackwell. This was another author that I had never read before, but these came through the store. The synopsis of these stories caught my eye, and then when I started reading them, I realized that Lawana Blackwell was taught, or yes, she was taught by Gilbert Morris, who is one of my favorite, all-time favorite historical fiction writers. And so her writing is very similar to this, and I thoroughly enjoyed this entire series. And we follow Julia in the first book. She is a widow who moves to Gresham, and because she inherited an inn, and so she fixes up the inn and takes in boarders, and then yes, just meets many different characters in Gresham, in the little village there, and follows their stories and the different people who come to stay and live at her inn. And I loved every single one of these books so much. 5 stars. And they all follow different characters within the village. And yes, I loved her writing. I loved the stories. The characters were fascinating, and I wish that they would be real people that I could get to know. It was just all around a good time with the Gresham Chronicles series. Okay, so then the next one that I picked up is another YA book, Love and Gelato by Jenna Welch. I'm just gonna say that I have not had much luck with YA books. I do not enjoy them, and it's probably because I am old and cynical of young love. So we follow a girl who moves to Italy to live with her father, and she meets a boy, and everything else that happens with that. And I love the concept. I love Italy and I love gelato and all of that, but I wanted more out of this book. But I rated it 2 stars, probably literally only 1 star the more I think about it, because I just did not enjoy it. Here's what I wrote for my review on Goodreads. Cute story, liked it but didn't love it, nothing worth keeping and reading again. Maybe I'm old and cynical of young love, but do teenagers really know what love is, and can they actually fall in love after knowing each other for 5 days? Yes, this book literally takes place over a span of 5 days, give or take. It did, however, make me want to eat all the gelato in Italy. So that's cool. I was a little bit snarky, I will say. I just did not enjoy this book at all. If you loved it, I'm sorry. Come at me, but I did not enjoy it. The content considerations, or love affairs, going to clubs, sensual dancing, way too much passionate kissing for teenagers who aren't even in a relationship, I might add. Gross. So, there is that. Did not enjoy it. The next one that I read was Out of the Storm by Jody Hedlund. So this is a novella, so very short little book for the series Beacons of Hope. I've never read Jody Hedlund before, probably won't pick it up again because this book ruined it. I hated it. 1 star. No character development, way too much sensual thinking and angst, and just not where it's at for me. And this is supposed to be Christian fiction. The faith content was not even hardly there. I did not enjoy it, and I do not recommend. So she is a daughter of a lighthouse keeper. There's a rescue of a man from a shipwreck, and he has to stay there because he's injured, and they fall in love and things like that. Was not worth my time. The next one I picked up was another classic, and this one was Persuasion by Jane Austen. And can I just say, I love this book so much. It is my new favorite Jane Austen. I can't believe it's taken me this long to read it. I loved it so much. It definitely doesn't contain as much wit and humor as her earlier books did, like Pride and Prejudice and Emma, but I love this story. I love Anne. It's the whole entire everything. 10 out of 10, recommend. Easily my new favorite Jane Austen. But I will say, do not watch the Netflix adaptation of this movie. Not worth your time. Ruined the story. I hated it. Very passionately. Clearly. It was not a good time for me. Then the next one that I picked up was a true story, or nonfiction, called We Keep the Dead Close. This one was recommended by the podcast What Should I Read Next? I listened to it like years ago. It was maybe 2 years ago, but she recommended this book once, and it sounded interesting, and I wanted to pick it up. And then we follow the story of Becky Cooper investigating a murder at Harvard that happened like 50 years ago, and it was never solved, and it seemed like a bit of a cover-up. And I love true crime. I love mysteries like that and trying to figure out things. I love listening to true crime podcasts, things like that. But yeah, this book, it's really thick. And I feel like it could have been shorter, because by the time we actually figured out who committed the murder, I was like let down, because it just felt like it was building up to this grand reveal, and it was a bit of a letdown. And she also, the writer, felt like it was just a bit of a letdown as well, just because of everything. And it just felt like there was a lot in this book that could have been left out, and the story could have been sped up a little bit more, I feel. But all in all, it was a good story, I should say, and it is true. It is a true story. So if you're interested in true crime, you might enjoy this. I think I only rated it like 3 stars because I was a little bored, and I thought maybe it could have been a little bit shorter, and some things just left out, some things that didn't really pertain to the actual story, and felt a little bit like she was pushing her political ideas and things like that in the book a bit too much, I feel. But it's also just because I don't really agree with her on her opinions, so I'm just putting that out there. The next one then that I read was another lighthouse book. I've had no luck with these lighthouse books. I love the idea, I love the premise, and the idea of living at a lighthouse. Lighthouses have always fascinated me, and so I want a good story set in a lighthouse. So if you have any, let me know, because this one just did not do it. I read the first one in this 3-in-1 volume, The Lightkeeper's Daughter by Colleen Coble. I've never read her either. And again, this just turned me off. I don't know that I'll pick up any of her books unless you guys think that she has others that are really good or better than this. I was just very bored. There was no character growth and like love at first sight immediately, so there was nothing like, I just felt the entire story and the writing was a bit lacking. I was bored and I will not finish the rest of the series. 1-star rating. I apologize, Colleen Coble. But moving on to better reading. Yes. A Wolf Called Wonder. Isn't this just a beautiful book? Wow. And the illustrations in here, I love them so much. So this one is by Roseanne Perry. And I almost spilled my coffee. I loved this book, 5 stars. We follow a wolf called Wonder as he is separated from his pack and wanders for thousands of miles and surviving, and yeah. I love the story, and it is based off of a real wolf who traveled thousands of miles in the Pacific Northwest. It's great. I think it would be a great read aloud, and it is a junior book, but I will say, if you have some sensitive children who are maybe not yet aware of the circle of life, the cycle of life, and predators and prey, because it is very, very much part of this story, because the wolf as a predator does have to survive and kill other animals for prey. I will say it's not graphic. They don't use the word blood, they use the word red and things like that, but there is a lot of death and a lot of suffering for animals, and as he is trying to survive because he gets injured and all of that. So just a heads up for that. But I still really enjoyed the story, and I think it was very informative on the life of wolves, and I found it fascinating. And then I also picked up her book, A Whale of the Wild. I love orcas. Orcas are my favorite marine animals, and I thought this one was a great story. And it was also there were a lot of facts that were presented in here that I wasn't aware of for orcas. All of the different kinds. I didn't know there were different kinds, different pods who hunt different animals to live. It was fascinating. I would say it was a little bit more boring than A Wolf Called Wonder, but I still really enjoyed this one, and it's also very informing on the orcas. And so if you have some animal lovers in your family, I feel like they would really enjoy those stories. Then the next one was a memoir of a blind hero in the French Resistance in World War II. It's called And There Was Light by Jacques Lucien. I don't know how to pronounce French names, so my apologies. But this story, I loved it so much. 5 stars. His writing is so beautiful. I just want to go back and read a few paragraphs and lines. His writing is so beautiful. So beautiful. I loved it so much. And it's just his journey he tells a story of when he was a young child of becoming blind, and then as he got older and was in school, like around 18 years old I believe is when the war broke out, but he started a group of hundreds of young men eventually who were part of the French Resistance. And yeah, this book was fascinating. Highly recommend. Fantastic. Okay, and so then the next series that I picked up, it's another YA series, and can I say again, I just don't have good luck with YA. I must not be reading the right ones. I don't know, but I am not enjoying, or I haven't enjoyed any that I've read so far. And I picked up the Summer I Turned Pretty series trilogy by Jenny Han. These were written back in like 2009, I believe, but they're becoming a little more popular because of the Amazon Prime show that has come out based on these books. I don't recommend the show. Too much drinking, drugs, sexual content, and teenagers in romantic relationships. I am not a fan. It's not my thing. The books, however, I would say that they are definitely cleaner than the show and could probably be enjoyed. They only talk about some other of their friends possibly, you know, sleeping around, things like that. But the actual characters themselves, until like the third book when they're older, yeah. There is definitely some fornication going on. I was very disappointed. And obviously these are secular books. So it's, you know, just content that is basically you shouldn't be surprised to have if they are secular books. But the stories themselves, I enjoyed them, but not really. I think I rated them 2 or 3 stars, 2.5 stars maybe. Because it was enough to keep me going. Like, I read the entire series, but the teenage, like the triangle, the love triangle thing, I hate that so much. And I just felt like the characters were very immature, but again, they're teenagers, and it's been a long time since I was a teenager, it feels like. And so I have to remind myself that I was probably just as immature, but I was also raised differently, so I would not have made some of the choices that they made. You know, we're just gonna put that out there. But take it or leave it. I kind of enjoyed it, but not really, and I don't really recommend. Basically, go in with open eyes and know that there could be some content that's a little bit questionable. Basically, there are better books out there to read, so maybe you should just skip this whole series. So there you go. We finished. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that, because the first time I tried to film this, I felt like my brain was all over the place, and this video probably feels like it's a little all over the place because I went in order that I read. I didn't separate anything, so there was just a lot of different types of books in there. But let me know if you've read any of these books and if you disagree with me on some of these books, or if you agree that they were good or not good. And if there are any of these that you would actually be interested in reading. So, yes. I feel like it was a good year for me, like for the most part, except the YA books. I enjoyed almost every book that I read, and I love that. It's great. I love when everything I pick up pretty much is a great read. So yes, there is my everything I've read so far this year reading wrap up. So yes, I'm filming this on a Thursday, so you guys will probably see it on a Friday or Saturday. You know, I'm trying to figure out this whole uploading schedule, but yes. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!